So this is something I thought about yesterday, except I don't know, I guess I forgot to say this. So something very interesting that happened when I went to Nuremberg is I learned, well, because I was like reading about it and I took a little tour, and during the tour they talked about it. So the Nazi trials actually happened in Nuremberg, Germany. This was a really big deal. So basically, there were lots of Nazis who were like executed for what they did during the Holocaust. A lot of high-ranking people, right? And their families like still live in Germany. Like they never like fled or anything, but what they did was they changed their last names and they just like lived on in the community so that they would not be associated with the Nazis, because a lot of them were like public execution was a big thing during that time, so a lot of them were executed very publicly. Obviously there's like a bunch of trials. It's like gone down in history as notoriously bad. And I think it's very strange because on the other hand, like in America, we have also had kind of a lot of coming to truths with what happened during the Holocaust, but we've never had a come to truths with what happened during the transatlantic slave trade. And because there have never been any reparations or anything paid toward Black Americans, then they've never had an opportunity to like build a Tel Aviv or build like something that could be of their own. Instead, I really appreciate the video that I'll put it in the description box, but it's kind of about how celebrities have become jesters, and in society there's always been a public place for jesters, and we've actually always had public facing jesters in society, specifically from the Black community. So I feel like in this time we have like, you know, Beyonce or like a LeBron James, like those type of people behaving like jesters. And I just think it's just interesting. It's like for me, it's like frustrating a little bit, right? Because you'd hope that like, I don't know how to put it. Like you'd hope that you'd be able to see something historic and bad, and the place where it happened would be able to acknowledge it and make it right. And that just, it didn't happen. And so kind of, I think a really blatant example of this right now, which I do think a lot of people aren't paying attention to. So I've seen a lot of content around how Halle or Chloe Bailey is hanging out with Burna Boy in Nigeria, and they're having these really big celebrations for her to come. And I think that's nice for Halle Bailey, I guess. If she's interested in Burna Boy, then, you know, hopefully they have all the best. But at the same time, like, it sounds like today and yesterday, because it's Christmas, there was an attempt to deliver food, like some sort of food bank situation to a lot of people who need food during this time. And because of the high cost, or because of inflation, a lot of people can't afford food right now. But as people tried to like rummage these trucks, they ended up like running over women and children to get to the trucks. So those women and children like lost their lives. And to me, it's just wild. Like I've said the same thing about like, this is kind of another reason why, and I hope that one day we like, kind of get there, but let me just speak for myself, right? Like I do understand a little bit more about like my roots, and so like I understand like my lineage comes from Ethiopia, so like why the fuck should I care about what's going on in Nigeria? It's not that I do or don't. I mean, I'm empathetic toward all of the struggles and challenges happening all over Africa, but I'm more empathetic toward Ethiopian people because they are like of me, right? And I think that's like a fair thing to say. And so I was very critical, and I still am, of, you know, The Weeknd, who's an Ethiopian superstar. He like basically doesn't really do much for a lot of the problems that are facing Ethiopia. Like you see Leah Kibidi, the supermodel from Ethiopia, doing much, much more for the country than you see him. And so it's just another way that these like mega celebrities are just making a lot of money to better themselves. But in terms of community and in terms of society, they're doing nothing. And a lot of the things that they're doing with their public facing image is actually really derogatory toward the members of their own community. So that's really tough. Like, why hasn't Burna Boy set up or tried to work with, like, why don't any of these like really big African Nigerian artists work with the local government in order to help facilitate some sort of structured food handoff, you know what I mean, that would help the locals get the food that they need, right? Like, that seems logical and fair, but it's just not like happening. It's just not a thing, and that is really messed up and pretty sad, honestly. So yeah, I just think that we should like be aware of that, care, like you should definitely care that that's happening. And I would even, go so far as to say like, oh, there's kind of something else I wanted to talk about in this video, because I think earlier in my maybe like adult place or whatever, I felt a little bit more like adamant, angry that, like, why aren't these celebrities doing more? Why aren't they blah, blah, blah? Oh my God, they should be blah, blah, blah. And in reality, actually, it isn't their responsibility to take care of other people. It isn't their responsibility to be community members. But I also think that we should be aware of that and stop acknowledging them as community members when they aren't members of your community. So there is that, and I feel very strongly about that, and I don't know how to make that like more clear, I guess. But there's also something else that I was thinking about it earlier today, because it, like, when I kind of saw that video, it made me like, it just validated, like, I have never considered, like, Burna Boy's not a great artist to me, but it did make me like give like a side eye as he's like, dude, I mean, I guess everyone should have their good experiences or whatever, but when you had, I think like 30 children just died and a whole bunch of adults, as people were like running over each other to get food. Not saying that it is his responsibility, but I wonder like what he does feel responsible for, especially when all of these artists are parading around right now. Nigeria, like, Iris Star, where are you when this type of shit is happening in your hometown? Like, Thames, I'm giving everybody who like don't, when you're waving that Niger flag and talking all that when everything's good, but when things are like not going well, all of a sudden you're silent, you don't have any solutions, you have nothing to say. Like, I'm looking at you then too, in the same way I hope you would like look at me. Like, this is not, stay true to this, not new to this. I guess I heard someone say that, and like, really. But anyway, so to get back to the point that I was going to make earlier, I really think that sometimes, especially this in relationships, this is kind of stemming from this conversation people are having around Chloe and Burna Boy. Like, maybe they're in a good relationship, or their relationship is very new, I guess. How could we know really anything about it? But it caused me to think about my own relationships, and specifically the way that sometimes you will date someone or you will know someone, and the way that your relationship ends with that person is so bad that you not only dislike them, you start to dislike their family. Like, you might resent their parents for birthing them, and like, you realize like the evil that that mother portrayed on the world. Like, I've had this situation happen to me a few times where it's like I look at the person in like another thing that's just about me, and I think that I don't know if other people really feel this way, but I do really feel that it's important to choose your community. And I actually heard Michael Knowles say something about that, and I would kind of like to echo it to an extent, because like for me, if I've chosen to like not be in community with you and to like that I don't like you, I'm not going to be a sub part of your community. Like for instance, I had a really bad experience at an art school that I went to, and I never went back. I think I might have gone back like one time, but like I definitely don't go to like any of the events. I don't communicate with the people still. I blocked them all. Hopefully, like nobody's like stalker enough to continue to have questions. Like, I would hope to be like a memory from way long ago that these people never think about in life ever again. Just forget me, pretend like I never existed, because that's what I try to do with them. Like, they don't come up in, memories about my growth or any of that bullshit. Like, I don't believe that. I think that it's fair to have a bad experience with someone and say like fuck them and leave them in the corner all the way over there. Them, their children, their family, their lineage. Maybe we need to put a country between us, some lines, like to where every single thing that you like, I would like stop eating food that they ate. Or if they like a certain color, I don't fuck with that color anymore. We are not able to like mutually coexist. It's not a thing. I don't believe in that. Call me an extremist, but I like wholeheartedly feel that way. And I think it's one of the reasons why I can respect Europe and Britain for, I guess, what it is. Like, I heard a lot of people comment on my London video, and they were making statements like, well, a lot of this stuff happened in Britain too, and like London's not exempt and things like that. And I think that they're right. I'm not trying to like pretend like the British people didn't like invent a lot of, really awful ways of living, but I also believe that they've invented a lot of really great ways of living, and I want to participate in those. Now, I think that the same applies for America, but in my lived experience, I have just experienced, and I think, I don't know if anyone, because I haven't talked about things in enough depth yet on this channel to kind of give more of a holistic perspective as to why I have such a disdain and an intolerance for that country. But when I do start to tell that story a little more, I think it will be very clear how like I feel like it's just full of demons or something. Like it's just not a good place. And sometimes you're on like the receiving end of the vileness. You're on the receiving end of like it's not even like intolerance. It's like there's, how can you say it? When there's no explanation for things to go wrong and they still just go wrong, that isn't coming out of like thin air. Usually there's like policies, procedures, people, culture, racism, a lot of different things that are playing in to the thing going wrong. And I don't like to be the person who like gaslights that as being a real experience when like I know for sure like this is what happened. But I wanted to really say that because I thought about that today, because I thought about it yesterday. Yesterday was like a really rough day for me because I had to even start to interact with someone who I just despise so much. Like I really believe that like that type of person is the person that makes me want to put my last dollar toward like Planned Parenthood, my last dollar toward like abortion rights, because it just, everyone does not deserve life. And I think that like it is really important for women to like be able to like use their use their own free will and deciding factors to make society like safer for the rest of us. I can't. I should find more words to be able to describe it, because it might off of the tip just sound vile, kind of without reason, and it isn't. It's definitely like vile with reason. Some people are that awful though. and it makes sense to not forget it.